This is the I'm Possible Project Show, where we interview real people who have achieved incredible feats in the face of overwhelming odds, showing that impossible is just a state of mind and that anything is possible. I'm your host, Joshua Rivedal. Today, in episode 4, From Foster Care to Yale University, I talked to Rodney Walker. Let's jump right in.
Mr. Rodney Walker. I had a beautiful chance to get to know this gentleman. We both are a part of the new speaker class at Campus Speak as of 2017, and I got a chance to hear him do a 10-minute speech as part of a conference that we both attended in Puerto Rico. And he's got a bachelor's degree from Morehouse College. He's got a master's degree from Yale. He's jumping to another Ivy League school, but I'm going to let him talk about it. So, Rodney, thank you so much for coming on the show with us today.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
It's my great pleasure. Now, I kind of riffed on that bio a little bit, but there's so much more to you than the bio that I gave. So would you please, for my sake, but for our listeners too, just kind of give us a little background on your life, where you've been, where you're going, the Rodney Walker experience.
Absolutely. And just for the record, I would like to say this is my first ever podcast. I'm really glad that this is with you, Josh. So that's great. It's tremendous, incredible opportunity. And for the sake of, what we do at Campus Speak and, how we wish to just go around the campuses and inspire our audiences and motivate them and move them to action. I just think there's no better platform to reach people than through the podcast medium, beyond just campuses and organizations. On the topic, though, of Campus Speak and, the platform that we have to inspire lives, I think more than anything, what I would like to use my platform for is to help kids and adults alike to understand the power of persistence, perseverance, and what those two qualities can do to help overcome any type of life adversity. And then when we think of life adversity, we all think of like those hard, fast, traumatic life experiences that, most people may not go through in their lifetime. And we forget that even the small doses of adversity in our life can just have as much a dramatic impact. I make no distinction between, you losing a parent versus you applying for a job and you unfortunately not getting a job. I think both of them they can be serious life adversities, and depending on how one takes it and the challenge that it presents to a person, they have the opportunity and the obligation to be persistent and resilient enough to overcome those challenges until the next one comes and other opportunities present itself to do better and to move forward. With that being said, I use my story as a vehicle only to help people understand not that, I didn't come from these type of circumstances and challenges, so I must not have anything to be, to complain about. That's definitely not the message I try to get across in my presentation. However, I do like to use the most dramatic stories in my own life to illuminate the one fundamental principle that I think transcends everyone's life, which is that we are certain to face challenges. We are certain to face adversity. The difference between those who face it and overcome it and those who don't is their value to be persistent and their value to be resilient and their value to have perseverance in their life to overcome those challenges. So with all that being said, just to give a brief description of my story, I'm a byproduct of Chicago South Side. I was born into poverty. Both of my parents were raised in Chicago's public housing. My mother had her first child at 13 years old, had 10 kids in her lifetime. My father dropped out of high school in his junior year, went to Vietnam, was a part of the Agent Orange campaign in Vietnam, and, went in and seen bodies blown apart, came back with severe post-traumatic stress disorder, learned how to use heroin in Vietnam, came back with that addiction, and it just really ravaged his life. Both of my parents grew up without a father figure, but in my mother's case, my mother met her father for the first time at 12 years old, and upon meeting him, she was sexually abused and molested by him, which then sent her life further down the spiral. Both of my parents are byproducts of highly dysfunctional households, both being single parents who weren't able to give them the necessary resources and the attention and the nurturing that they needed to be successful. So as a default, both of my parents went to the one thing that we all would like to deviate our youth from in terms of getting guidance and nurturing, which is the streets, because that's where my parents got their nurturing and guidance from. And from that experience, my parents meeting one another and having these life experiences coming together to procreate and have children, I am a byproduct, and my life is a blueprint from that dysfunction. So my parents were together. They were highly dysfunctional. They were drug users. Their relationship together was really, it was really dysfunctional. They got into a lot of arguments. They didn't work well. However, time and that relationship kept them together long enough to see to it that they had 6 children together. At the age of 5, my father was incarcerated for selling drugs. That was my moment to enter the foster care system, along with 6 of my siblings. And from the age of 5 to 17 years old, I've been in 12 different foster homes in Chicago on the south and west sides, all points in between. From my experience in foster care, I started off with relatives, which didn't work for various reasons. And Chicago's foster care system was highly dysfunctional as well, I would argue. But that transition from non-relative foster homes from foster homes that were relatives to non-relative foster homes really, in my mind, broke the spirit of me socially and emotionally, because the moment that I moved from relative homes to non-relative homes is really when my life, in my mind, went down a heavy spiral. I was with parents who abused me physically, socially, psychologically, emotionally, spiritually. I wasn't given the motivation and the encouragement that I needed to think that I was worth it or valued. I had foster parents tell me that I wasn't going to be anything in life. I had teachers and educators in my early years of high school say that I wasn't equipped to learn at the level of my peers. I was diagnosed as autistic as a young child from various diagnoses from doctors saying that because I was quiet or because I was reserved or because I was shy and I didn't want to, entertain, being around other kids, that I had a learning disability and that I couldn't, be with other children. And so that put me in special education. All through school, I lived with the fact that I was a special ed student. I was teased for being a special ed student, and that further denigrated my self-worth and respect for myself. Therefore, I had such low self-esteem that even the potential that I felt I had wasn't able to be actualized, because I always had this burden of I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough to be, with the rest of the kids and do as the rest of the kids did. So throughout my freshman year of high school, up until my junior year of high school, and even in my grade school years, I suffered academically. I never made good grades in those years, because not necessarily because the material was so difficult, but because I didn't think I had it in me, one, to achieve academic success. 2, I wasn't interested in academic success because I was in foster care. The one thing that I valued and I cared about the most was being back with my family. And 3, again, my self-esteem was so low that I didn't have the mindset of success. My life, so with all that encompassing my reality, my life became just a whirlwind of victimization, I would argue. One thing after another happening to me, and me taking those challenges as is and saying, well, I'm not good enough to overcome these things. No one wants me. I'm not wanted. So, what difference does it make if I go through this or that? I mean, what's the point? It wasn't until I met a mentor in my senior year of high school, after aging out of foster care, who helped instill within me a value that to this day no other mentor, teacher, educator, role model has been able to do for me. And I live as a byproduct of his sincere mentorship after the fact. And briefly, I would just share that it was a day in detention. I was a senior in high school. I had went to detention because I came to school late, as I did for the 12th or 13th time in the school year. And I met this individual in detention. He was the dean of my high school, and he saw in me what most educators and even foster parents didn't see in me at the time. He saw a potential for greatness. He used detention as an opportunity to mentor and guide me through my social emotional barriers that I was suffering from, that real post-traumatic stress disorder that I had encountered through foster care and through not having the family. And he literally took me through a series of mentorship sessions that helped me grapple and deal with that post-traumatic stress that no other teacher had the opportunity or time to do. And long story short, through a series of mentorship initiatives, to engage in activities with other students in detention that brought us together as a unit, that helped us to grapple with these social systemic elements in our life, such as not knowing who our parents were, where they came from, gun violence, gang violence, drugs, sexual molestation in our communities, what it did to impact our life, the life of our parents, what was the thing that basically broke the back on our life. We had to really do some deep analysis of that. It was in engaging in that type of conversation, in that activity, in that mentorship that literally changed us, in my mind, in the most dramatic way, because no one cared or bothered to engage us in that way. So the act of engaging in that way literally brought me to a place of, I would argue, reckoning. One day I was able to reflect on the thing that happened to me that was the worst thing that could have happened to me that I never disclosed to anybody. And it was an engaging in that conversation through so many days and weeks in the school year that one day I literally broke. And I broke down and I couldn't stop crying. I was so overwhelmed with emotion because I had realized that one thing that happened to me, or the series of things that happened to me in my life, had such an emotional bearing on me that I wasn't even able to get it out. It was like a hemorrhage, and I didn't even know it was a hemorrhage. I just thought it was just something that it just happened to me and whatever. I just moved on with my life. But I had no idea how bad those series of events happening to me, the abuse, the trauma, all the times I was told I wasn't worth it. I had no idea how much of a social emotional bearing that had on me until I met the person who literally thought to engage me that way consistently over and over again. And the day that I broke, the day that I was overwhelmed with emotion and couldn't stop crying, and I had to deal with the fact that I was told this over and over again, and it changed my life. That's the day that I decided that I wouldn't be a victim to that reality anymore, that I wouldn't be a victim to that adversity that had impeded on my learning, that had stifled my growth for so long. And so from him doing that, we were able to literally rebuild and pick up where I had left off. I would argue at something like 5, 6 years old, right? Because all this stuff that had happened to me had hardened me as an individual. So I had to literally start back over again in my mind, socially and emotionally, from those moments when I literally shut down and checked out spiritually, mentally, and emotionally. So that is when I began to rebuild my life, the self-confidence, the esteem conversations, the re-engaging in school, the purpose-driven life that I had to rebuild for myself. That happened all in my senior year when I had basically had that expression of letting go. I call it the letting go phase, like the Goodwill Hunting moment when you just come to the fact that your life is broken, accept what has happened, embrace your past. Now you need to do something right now to move forward for the sake of yourself and your children and your family. I had that moment in my senior year. From that moment, I was able to do things for myself and be deliberate in doing those things to put myself in a position where I would never have to go back to that type of reality again. And that's when I started taking school seriously. That's when I started to read more. That's when I started to engage with my teachers more about my classwork. That's when I started to see college as a reality, as an actual reality. I got involved in the business plan competition that taught me how to build a business, the importance of entrepreneurship education, because I wanted to do for myself and have ownership. And that helped me tremendously in getting the money that I needed for college. I applied to 13 colleges in high school. I only got accepted to one college on academic probation. That was Morehouse College. And after getting accepted, I just needed one opportunity to prove that I was motivated and inspired and driven enough to change my life. And Morehouse gave me that opportunity. From going to Morehouse, I continued my academic success and I never looked back. The academic piece I discovered in my senior year up until going into my freshman year of college, I discovered that academics was not even hard for me. It was just all those social emotional barriers that impeded on my learning. So however much time I needed to study and read and engage in the work to get good at it, I did that. Whether it took 2 hours of study time or 12 hours of study time, I did what was necessary to overcome those academic challenges. And so school was just hard work for me. So I just continued to nurture that, continue to do the work, continue to talk to my mentors and my guidance counselors about what I should be doing, how I should be thinking. I continued to read books that basically nurtured and fed my spiritual and social, emotional health and well-being I had a genuine desire to make myself a better person. And from that came all these great things in my life that I didn't even know I could achieve, but just a shift of my reality from within is what, in my mind, caused all those things to happen. So long story short, from that mentality, from that changed internal reality, came me graduating from Morehouse, being the first in my family to graduate from college, actually the first in my immediate family to graduate from high school. I got an opportunity to study abroad in college. I got an opportunity to travel over 12 different countries. While in my collegiate experience, after graduating from Morehouse, I had the desire to go to graduate school, so I applied for all these schools and was fortunate enough to get into Yale University for a master's program in ethics. I went there and I did that. And from Yale, I had the opportunity to work with kids on the very thing that I felt changed my life for the better, which was not more curriculum or more academic, sessions about how to master test scores, but to challenge kids on tackling the one thing that they are always trained to run from, which is the social systemic barriers that are impeding on their learning, thereby not allowing them to perform at their best. And I felt like in the program that I built from college, literally, I wanted to teach kids how to come to terms with themselves, and in doing that, that will challenge them to go forward and be their best selves. That has been my dream, my desire, my passion. And from graduating from college, I have sought to build a program that teaches kids how to take ownership of their lives and not have to look for other people to do that for them, and thereby in taking ownership, they can go forward and be their best selves and achieve the life that they truly desire for themselves because they want it and they want it for themselves and their, in their future generations and things like that. And so that has literally been the hallmark of my life. And that's what has driven me to this point to not only be successful for myself, but successful as a role model for other young people who will see the work that I do and the work that others do who have the opportunity to go forward in their life. So that's my story in a nutshell.
That's a big nutshell, and a couple things come to mind initially, well, more than a couple, but just the fact that I'm so inspired and proud of you and to know you and what you've been through and where you've been and where you're going and just all the things that you've taken from your life experience, and you're flipping it on its head and saying, I'm not a product of where I come from or where I came from. I'm me. I'm Rodney, and I've got lots of things to give back to the world, and that's what you're doing. And I'm so excited for more and more kids to hear what you have to say. One other thing, and then we'll get a little more serious, but I love listening to you talk because you take words that some might say are big or thesaurus words or whatever. And not me, of course. No, I'm a writer, so I got fancy words in my back pocket. But I could probably listen to you read like a social work journal, things that are like boring as hell. But you just have such a great command of the English language, and you just wanted to throw that out there.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. At the top, you were talking about persistence. And that's an interesting thing to me. Okay, so you and I, we don't share the same experiences, of course. I come from some abuse in my home. I don't know how to compare it, and I don't want to do that between your life and mine. I'm not in the business of comparison. But I come from abuse. I come from a semi-nurturing environment, but not always there. And I kind of had to do the college thing on my own and did a bunch of other things on my own. And for me, in the beginning, I think the persistence was cultivated because there was an element of escapism to it and fantasy. So I wanted to get away from my upbringing and surroundings and things that I didn't feel were right for me. And so at first it was kind of escapism, and that's where my persistence came from. And I was running scared. I never wanted to come back to that place where I wasn't allowed to be who I wanted to be or who I truly thought I was. And I wasn't nurtured mentally or emotionally at all times. And I never wanted to go back to that poverty. So I was running scared. And so I think that's the beginnings of my persistence. And it's taken a different turn, and the persistence is a bit more rooted in the idea of feeding my family and feeding the world. But I'm curious as to your persistence and how were those seeds planted? How did they grow? And how have you cultivated that mindset going forward? And has it changed over the years?
Right. I definitely would say it has grown in an exponential way. I think, and this might sound just really not trivial or maybe even elementary, but it's such a simple idea that the beginning of my desire to persist started, in all honesty, from a knowledge of self. And I don't mean like a knowledge of like even just like where I come from, my cultural, my historical cultural roots. I literally mean a knowledge of my personal self. I mean, the things that I felt before I was engaged in this way, the way I described is I was doing things that I didn't even have an idea I was doing. I was coming home with like D's and F's on my report card, and I thought nothing of it. I would get, teased and bullied in school and things like that. And I thought I was actually self-affirming in that teasing because everything that was talked about or told of me, I just accepted it as a kind of like a fact, like, oh, you're not smart and things like that. I was like, oh, well, of course. I mean, I've been told that, most of my life. So, I mean, I must not be, whatever. Like, I didn't even think to even challenge the status quo of myself or my community. And all it took was a simple person to engage me in a different way that got my wheels turning. Simple questions like, what was the most, when did your life change? Like that simple question. I mean, whatever, like nobody even thinks about that in all seriousness. But when somebody lingers a question like that and something really did happen to your life that was a turning point in your life, it makes you think more critically of that. That was, in my mind, the first question that really got my wheels turning. When did your life change? And, at the beginning, I can just remember myself saying, I don't know. What difference does it make? And then as I sat on that question, I was like, well, actually, I can remember when I was 7 years old, and I remember when this happened. And I remember when my foster parent, I did this, and I didn't think it was a big deal. And then she said this to me, and I can remember feeling that way about what she said. And I remember I never felt the same again, like that kind of thing. And, my mentor actually asked me this in a room where there were women who were raped, where there were men who were struggling with their sexuality. where there were men who were literally struggling with the fact that their father wasn't around, men who were, who had children and they were only 16, 17 years old, and they had to grapple with the fact of how to be a father when they didn't have a father to teach them how to be that. And so they had to grapple with this question, well, when did your life is so terrible right now, but when did it change? When did it start? Can you go back to a point when that one thing happened that you may not even told anybody or maybe even thought was the source of it? So I say in a holistic way, the nurturing, the question of who are you, or that knowledge of self is really what sparked in my mind, like the desire to know. And then in the pursuit of knowledge and me figuring it out by talking to my parents, by talking to my family, by talking to, my friends and engaging that conversation, that I came to a point of reckoning, real reckoning, I would say. And then in that reckoning, I had the desire to persist because I know that from what I knew, I couldn't go back to what I was doing in the same way, if that makes sense. Like all of the things that I was doing was because I didn't even care to engage in understanding it. But once I understood it, it was so impossible for me to go back to keep doing it. So that persistence led me to say, you know what, kind of like similar to your situation, it's like I can't afford, even if I know what I know now, I can't even afford to do this, continue to do this, what I'm doing, because I just know so much different now. I understand so much different about myself.
So there's some self-knowledge, there's nurturing, there's support, there's the facilitating of big questions, seem to be the beginnings of the tree of persistence that's grown in your life and that's wrapped its branches around different components of your emotional and social and emotional spirit or spirituality, as it were. What would you say to me or to our listeners or to youth or anybody? What would you say maybe the first one or two things when realizing that they need to cultivate some resilience and persistence in their own life? Because I'm curious about that. I know it's probably not a one-size-fits-all, but I'm so involved in the lives of young people, and I have teenagers hanging out at my house, and some of them need some guidance. We won't name any names, but I want to be able to have some of Rodney Walker's words in my arsenal. So what would you say to that?
Right. I give five main steps in my programs and in my talks to specifically the audience that I speak with, young people who are generally between the ages 16 and 24, 25. So basically from freshman year, sophomore year of high school to even community college and college students. My five basic principles for literally, in my mind, grappling with that kind of adversity and building a sense of resilience and persistence is this. And before I actually say it, I want to say that I'm building a program that I would like to call entitled TIME. And TIME is an acronym of Trauma-Informed Mentorship and Education. And in my mind, I want this to fundamentally teach students how to the value of persistence and resilience and what it can do to literally transform life circumstance. So here's the five basic messages in this order that I would say kids and students need to do to help change their reality for the better. The first thing is you have to embrace your past. All of this comes from a building relationships with students, but in our mentorship efforts, and for students in general, they have to come to a place where they embrace their past, meaning they don't see the abuse that they may have went through, or that person telling them that they wasn't worth it, or they're not going to be anything, or the moment that they had the most traumatic event happen in their life. They can't see that as an impediment, as a detriment to their life. They actually have to see that as an opportunity, as a blessing in disguise, because in that shifting of thinking or shifting of perception about that thing that happened to them or the reality of their life, that's what starts the upward creative process of development and growth. So they have to feel like this happened for a reason, that this just didn't come about because they are bad people or whatever the circumstances may be. So they have to first and foremost, without question, embrace their past. That is the first absolute step. Nothing can happen before that happens. And however we have to engage with them as mentors, as role models, as guidance counselors, as educators, as parents, we have to get them to first do that. The second thing is, if these youth haven't done so already, they have to forgive their parents. That's the second step. So after they've embraced their past, they have to forgive the ones who have put them in the position that they are in. So they have to forgive their parents. They have to forgive their mothers, their fathers for abandoning them or not doing enough for them or carrying on a system of dysfunctional relationship that has impeded on their social, psychological development, that has put them in the position that they're in. Because, in fact, I always like to say that before there was God, there was parents. Before you knew who God were, your God was your parent. And so children by default are psychologically and socially and emotionally programmed based off of the relationship or lack thereof of their parents. And they're conforming their reality for them, right? Because they don't have a reality other than the one that their parents construct for them at birth or whatever. So they have to forgive their parents. If you have children who are dealing with serious trauma, serious adversity, and they don't know how to get through it, they have to first embrace their past and accept and embrace and forgive those who put them in that, which is their parents. The third thing after that is they have to create a vision board, because you can't go anywhere unless you know where you're going. You have to accept the fact that your location is not your destination, as a great friend, Raphael Gordon used to say, always says. They have to create a vision for themselves different from the one that they have, because in creating that vision, that holds them accountable to a life trajectory that we can't hold them accountable for because they haven't committed to anything. So they have to commit to a vision. So they have to engage in the process of creating a vision board. So that's the third step. The fourth step after they've done that is they need to find a mentor. And I think it's very important that we let students know that they do not have to do this by themselves. They do not have to engage in this process on their own. There are programs, there are efforts, there are initiatives out there in place that helps merge mentees with mentors who can help kids, to basically get that one person who's going to help them where they are and give them the tools and the guidance that is necessary for them to get where they want to go or where they're trying to go, and to be that positive role model that they need to be for themselves. So they don't have to be that. I call this deliberate adoption. I call it deliberate adoption because it's like you're not being adopted, but you're choosing to let someone help you in a way that the foster care system don't, because the foster care system just kind of puts you wherever they see fit. You don't have any choice, for the most part, in the decision-making process for where you want to go as a foster child, whatever. In this process, you do. You have to choose someone who you see as a role model, as someone who can help you genuinely get where you want to go, right? Kids do it anyway when they sell drugs, when they're out in the streets, when they gangbang. They don't know it, that they're actually deliberately choosing people as their role models. It just so happened that they're their own role models. So they have to find a mentor. The last part is that they have to, after that process is over with, which is really never, but the ongoing process of it, after they have achieved positive results, they have to go back and mentor other kids, because truly this is a revolving door. The only way, I will argue the most effective way that they can help themselves is by helping other people, because it's in the process of helping other people that you build a system of self-accountability and engagement that then continues forward. If you didn't know this, I'm sure you know this, Josh, but when you speak to kids, I would argue that you help yourself just as much, if not more, than you help the kids, because it's in the process of telling your story and sharing your story and trying to help other students that as a default, you help yourself, because you are actually releasing those things that have impeded on your own self and your learning. And so you're reaffirming your commitment to action, to being a better person, to helping other youth. And so I think that's also important as well. So the last step in my mind is that once you have received that mentorship, that vision, and have moved forward in that positive direction, go back and help other kids do the same thing. So that's my top 5 advice to kids and students who really want to make a life transformation. First, embrace your past. 2, if you haven't done so already, forgive your parents or forgive whoever was the perpetrator of your life. It's not for them, it's for you. 3rd, create a vision board. 4, find a mentor who will actualize your creation of that vision board. And 5, once you have done that process and have engaged in it, go back and help others to do the same thing.
Such important words and work. And with, I can say that a lot of these I kind of stumbled upon in my own life, but much older than 25, not much older, I guess 27, 28, 29. I was suicidal, as many of our listeners know, back in 2011, 26 going on 27, lost my father to suicide almost 2 years prior. And as I was recovering from that suicide ideation, that suicidality, I started to embrace my past. And once I started to embrace my past and realized this doesn't have to be a detriment, I can turn this on its head, which is really kind of the theme of this show. It's really kind of turning liabilities into assets and lemons into lemonade, which is exactly what you're doing, Rodney. It's exactly what you're teaching kids and youth and people to do. And I'm so appreciative of that. Once I was able to embrace my past and say, okay, I don't need to let this hold me back anymore, that's when the real growth started to occur. And another thing that happened kind of by accident was I had to forgive my parents. And my mom is still with us, and she's a great woman. She's a lovely woman. But as any parent, they're not perfect. And she made a lot of mistakes. And I'm a parent now, and I'm making some mistakes, and I'm really trying to work through that because I'm a new parent. Even though they're teenagers, I'm a new parent. And so once and you're right, Rodney, it's not for them, it's for you. Because to hold those grudges around, it impedes your social and emotional development in your spirit and your spirituality. And I mean that in a non-religious sense, but it impedes your personal growth, because if you're carrying that grudge around all day long, every day, it's a heavy weight to carry. And it colors your actions and reactions and what you can and can't do and what you decide to do. And it limits you. It really, really limits you. And the mentorship is so important. And I discovered that in my early 20s, and that kind of helped launch my acting career when I was doing that full time. And then I found mentorship later, after 26, 27, in a variety of ways, and to the point where you're talking about this revolving door and helping others after you've been helped. I mean, that's, if people know anything about addiction, that's one of the core components of Alcoholics Anonymous. Is you go to the meetings and you go through your recovery and you go through your steps, and then the next thing that you do is you take on a commitment, you take on a sponsorship role, and you help other people. And with my story and what I do, as I was coming out of my suicide ideation back in 2011, one of the key components that kept me alive in that period. Now, I don't need just my story to keep me alive. There's so many things, but one of the main components of that was I was helping other people. I was telling my story. I was giving back, and so then I found purpose and meaning and responsibility and a commitment to stay here and to continue to help people. And so I think your 5 components of what you call time, I think, are so tremendously important and so well put. And I'm excited to see where that goes and how that grows. Question for you, and I have an idea as to maybe the answer, but you're going to have your very unique spin on it. Because many people would see, and this kind of ties into your work and some of the words that you've already spoken, many people would see Rodney's life and how he grew up, diagnosed as some level of autistic and terrible grades and a teen mother and parents who were abusing substances and who were products of some unfair socioeconomic, to say it lightly, and then you jumping through the foster care system. All these things that many people would say, Rodney's never going to make it out. Rodney's going to just be a liability for the rest of his life, and he's going to be on public assistance and blah, 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 blah. So many people probably said that to you, and you've already alluded to that, and you've been explicit about it in some ways. So some people would say those are liabilities. But how have these liabilities, which you've now turned into assets, how have they actually changed your life for the better? Because for a while, they made it worse. How have you flipped it and how have these things made your life better?
Yeah, kind of similar to what I was saying earlier, which is that, and I didn't know it at the time, but that adversity, those liabilities actually turned out to be blessings in disguise, and I didn't know it then. But I would like to say that, I couldn't have the platform that I have, and I try to tell this to young people. I couldn't have the platform that I have without the adversity that I've experienced. Now, to be fair, everyone faces a measure of adversity, so in that regard, my platform is not unique because anyone can take their challenges in life because they're inevitable. Everybody has them, and to make a platform out of that to teach others how to overcome that. If they have themselves overcome that. All liability has the opportunity to be a blessing in disguise or an asset in this kind of platform that we have. It just so happened that my liabilities have been so substantial and so great, relatively speaking, that it allows for my platform to be that much greater. And I appreciate what I have gone through just so much more because I'm able to impact and inspire people on this level. And it wouldn't, in my mind, it wouldn't be as powerful or as impactful had it not have been that way. And so there's a couple of things that I have done to kind of use my liabilities or see my liabilities as an asset in this way over time. The first way that I've done it is after I went to college and I became the first in my family to do so, I sought to go back to my community and share my story with my fellow friends and the young people in my community. So I told them of everything that I went through. I shared with them my story, and I told them that, listen, your location is not your destination. Your story doesn't have to be your defining moment for what you do in your life. You can take your story and use it as a vehicle for success if you choose to do that. If life is just messed up, I don't have a lot of beautiful stories. I don't have a lot of stories of Superman coming to save kids who are, in a community where people are getting killed every day and drugs is rampant in the community. There are no jobs. There are no men in the community. They're all in prison or they're in jail. Like, there are no beautiful stories. So I don't want to come in there and feed them with false hope. and I don't do that. But what I did seek to do was to tell them that despite all of that, somehow, some way, God saw to it that he put me in a position to have the chance to make my life different from those who were before me. So I sought to do that. And that was the first thing I did to help, in my mind, make my liability sort of an asset to other people. That if I couldn't do it, the very least I can do is share my story with other kids so that maybe they would be able to do it. Right. So that's the first way. The second way is that I was blessed to be put on that platform where I was invited to colleges and to high schools to speak to students about my story. And it was in my willingness to become vulnerable to my adversity in my life that then I used that to inspire and motivate other kids. That's the second way that I've actually turned my liability into assets. And then the third way, the final way, which I think has been the best way and even the most profitable way in some cases, is that I wrote a book. I wrote a book about my journey from foster care to Yale. And that book, unbeknownst to me at the time, did something incredible to my platform. Because in writing that book about my journey, I was able to get my story out into places that I wouldn't have been able to get to just by traveling. I got on Amazon. My book was sold in Barnes and Nobles. And after I hit the media waves, people started to go out, read my book and buy it. And they were so inspired that they invited me to come talk extensively to their children, to their youth, even to adults who were going through some similar circumstances. And in my mind, that is the greatest way I've turned my liability into an asset, is because I put it on a platform that it can be shared with so many people. And then that way, so many people have taken so many learning opportunities from hearing and learning about my story.
Mm. And that's what storytelling does. It allows us to connect in so many different ways on so many different levels. Somebody might connect with your foster care component. Some people might connect with the college level. Some might connect. I mean, there's a lot of different touch points that you have. And that's the beautiful thing about storytelling, and storytelling for the benefit of other people and what you're doing. And so I love what you've done to kind of turn those lemons into lemonade and to kind of share with everybody your recipe to be that lemonade barista, if I may. And you're certainly a master at it. Even the masters have lots to learn, so I don't want to pigeonhole you into being the guru, even though
appreciate it.
But it's so funny too. I connect with you on the level about the book. My memoir. There's other books, the Impossible series, but my memoir came out 2013, so about almost 4 years ago. And it's been one of the greatest, liability into asset kind of a deal, because there's a lot of dark stuff in there in a lot of different ways that, like you say, I can't connect with people every single day in every single location, but somebody in Russia can buy it, somebody in Boise, Idaho, and it allowed me to come into places where I wouldn't normally be allowed or be invited to come speak and share my story. And it got on some recommended reading lists, and there was, some financial reward behind it. And it was the way I met my wife. And so there's a lot of, it's just kind of funny. I know. It's just kind of a funny, interesting component to my life, and great to hear and interesting to hear that it's been one of yours as well. And I'm gonna pick up your book, order it after we get off of our interview here. But I want to take things into a different direction for just a few minutes, Rodney. We have been so serious and academic, and we've been having a great time. At least I've been having a great time. I can't see your face, but it sounds like you are. And I want to switch things up a little bit. And so this is kind of like, this is our quick fire round. And so these are just some fun questions that kind of get people to know Rodney in a little bit different of a light, something a little more fun. There's no right or wrong answers. This is like the Jimmy Fallon Tonight Show kind of a interview. So we're just going to have fun for a couple of minutes. I might make some comments because that's how I roll. You ready for this, man?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
All right, definitely. Here we go. All right. Rodney, what is your favorite word?
My favorite word? Rodney.
This, ladies and gentlemen, is the most humble person I've ever met, and I'm excited that his favorite word is Rodney. Like, somebody's calling me. Somebody wants to pay me. I don't know.
Right.
I'm enrolled in another Ivy League school. Somebody said Rodney.
Right.
Fair enough. That is the first time I've heard that on this podcast. I hope somebody else answers Rodney just for the hell of it. Like, they listen to this and they're just the biggest smart ass. All right, moving right along. Rodney, what is your least favorite word?
Least favorite word?
Yeah.
My least favorite word is ward. WARD.
Ward. Like as an award of this. Because of
of
your background.
They call kids in foster care. Yeah, they call them wards.
A ward of the state. You're not even a human being. You're a ward.
Right. And we'll say the word.
I'm glad you didn't say Josh. That would have been a total dick move.
Yeah. Right now.
Right. What do we got? Maybe 3 more. Okay. So if somebody made a movie of your story, let's say, let me get you on Netflix. We got a Netflix movie of the Rodney Walker story. Who would play the title role?
Oh, that is man, I was thinking about that too.
Of course you were.
I was thinking about who would play me in my role. I actually do not know who I would.
Ryan Gosling
play my role. I'm not that. Man, I wouldn't. No, I can't say Ryan Gosling.
No, that would not be the right. I'm just teasing you, man.
That would not be it. Man, I have no idea.
All right, so let me think. Let me name some people, and then maybe we'll pick from there. Ooh, what's his name? Damn it, Ali. Marshall Ali. Yes, that guy's amazing. Okay, so him.
But no, because he's kind of old. Yeah, he's kind of old.
Kind of old. That's rude.
He's kind of old.
He's not going to come on the show, dude. No, I'm kidding. All right. So here we go. Drake. Okay, just for the hell of it.
The one person who I thought back in the day was this guy who played. Have you ever seen this movie called Antoine Fisher? That's kind of related to my story a little bit. That guy, but I wouldn't be right because he already did a foster care story.
That's all right. He can play another one. He's got it in him. He's in it for the money anyway. So, or we'll put words in his mouth. So
right.
He got $5 million
also,
to play
exactly. Do you know who a person named Marcus Houston?
Yes, I do.
He's an artist. Okay, maybe him. Maybe him.
All right. Well, as long as we can have I don't know, because we're gonna have to kind of. I kind of want to have a role in here in this movie, maybe as like Rodney's dorky best friend or something like that. Maybe in high school. I need to make some money, dude. So put a good word in for me when they cast this thing.
You might be in the Yale chapter.
All right.
I met a couple friends at Yale. I was like, oh, okay. Like my good friends.
You just microaggressed me, man. I don't appreciate that. I'm kidding. I want to play the angry social worker. All right, man. All right. This is kind of a tricky one, but I think you got it in you. So who or what is your spirit animal?
It would be a lion. First of all, I'm a Leo. Even if I wasn't Leo, I would still say lion.
Rodney Simba Walker, everyone, the lion.
Exactly.
All right. Anyway, last one. Here we go. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say to you as you enter or as you get kicked out?
Well, hopefully it's as I enter. I would like to hear God say, welcome.
I think we can bank on that if heaven exists, because you're doing such great work. So, Mr. Rodney, that's the end of our quick fire round. But I want to ask you, 6 months to a year, what does the future hold for you? Next 6 months, next year, what's your personal vision? What's happening? What you got going on? Personal life, business life, whatever you want to kind of discuss or share with us, man. We'd love to know what's on your radar.
Sure. I'll start really brief or personal, but the hallmark of my vision, I am probably the biggest visionary of anyone that I personally know, because my mind just kind of expands about what could be. This is how I work. Personally, though, in a year, I hope to graduate from Harvard with a Master's of Education, and then a few years after that, just go ahead and go back to pursue a doctorate, which would be 2 extra years of school. But later on, though, I'm engaged. I've been engaged as of March 31st of this year, so I plan to get married next year in September-ish. So hopefully that in a year, I will be all married up and just loving life. And I desire to be an entrepreneur. I told myself this every so often, but I always remind myself that I'm doing this so that I can work for myself and do for myself and build my own campaign. That is generally what I want to do career-wise. I thrive in the space of being an entrepreneur. I love the business of speaking, inspiring, transforming, and motivating people in general, but students in specifically also, more particular students who have gone through serious life challenges, who need that extra motivation and support to get out. So with all that being said, my vision, my goal, my grand architectural vision, if I can create it the way I wanted it, would be I would want to create a program that literally runs without me having to run it. A program that can be a social entrepreneurship organization where students literally are the architects and the drivers of their own success, where adults do not have to be involved in that process. I think the best thing we can do for kids is to create a sort of social stratosphere, a program that is specifically designed to self-empower them in such a way that within 3 to 5 years, you won't even need adults to even run a program, because the students will be, it will be self-perpetuating. It will be a self-perpetuating prophecy. The way I like to think about it is like fraternities and sororities, right? Like, the thing that drives fraternities on campus so much is this desire to be a part of it. These students, like, they do best, they do their best, they get their grades up, they get above a 3.0 GPA, and they do like campus activities, and they be their best selves just so that they can be a part of this organization that's not necessarily driven by adults per se, but it's the marketability of it, the lure of it is because there are other students who are serving at the helm of those things, of those organizations that students then want to be a part of. I want to create a program, a social movement like this that helps kids to reconcile with their trauma, to get over those social emotional barriers, that helps them to find out who they are at their core, all those things that are impeding on their learning and their life success, and then create a sort of program that helps students help other students become successful and drive their own reality in the same way. I think the problem with education today is it is adults telling kids what to do. What we have learned is that you cannot tell kids, let alone adults. You definitely can't do it for adults, but you definitely can't tell kids what to do. Kids are going to do what they want to do. It's our job to equip them with the best program and the best education necessary for them to do for self. My biggest problem with education and everything about this world, so much so, is that we are so busy doing things for people that we never allow people the opportunity to do for self. As long as we are in a system that allows kids, that we feed kids kind of like a program that we're trying to market to them, and then they do it, and then they steadily come back for more and more, we'll never give them the ability to be independent and drivers of their own reality. This is what I'm trying to create, a program where I invite kids to engage in their own creative process and build their own blueprint for their lives so that they don't have to depend on parents or adults to drive their own success. So what is the number one complaint that parents always say about kids? I can't get my kid to like school. I can't eat him. I can't make him want to eat vegetables. Oh my God, my kid he's just so lazy. I don't know why he won't just get motivated and go to school. He don't want to go to college. That's that main thing. But your goal should not want your kid to go to college for the sake of you want him to go to college. Your goal should be that you want your kid to go to college because he genuinely wants to go to college himself. You should want him to do for himself the way that he should. So this program I hope that I create will be a program that once I create it, within a few years, I can step back, and all the adults who administer the program can step back, and kids will genuinely drive it themselves. They'll create their own life plans. They'll be motivated to succeed, and then they will take this same program and give it to someone else coming before them. Because I think that's genuinely the way it should happen. It should be a social movement that literally transform and revolutionize the way people think about themselves. And that's how we will then, little by little, change the psychological status of our communities. More than economics that impedes on community development, poverty, all those things that encompass it. More than economics, it's a psychological torment that continues to plague our community. Until we literally change and transform the psychological status of our communities, that's when things will change. And I hope to build a program that can literally transform communities from the inside out. That, in my mind, that is how you then change all those other things, because change, in my mind, starts from within, and then we can branch out and do other things. So hopefully, if all goes well and I stick to my vision, I think all that will happen, and that's my life's work, and that's what I desire to do.
Man, I'm so excited for you. You are doing amazing, incredible, life-changing for yourself and world-changing for many others. What's the best way if people want to get in touch with you, if they want to support you, if they want to figure out how to help? What's maybe the best way or a couple of ways that they can reach out and get in touch or follow you or what have you?
So, yeah, the best way to reach out would be I have Twitter. My handle is at rwalkerx, at rwalkerx. I have an Instagram, which is instagram.com/RodneyJW. Because my middle name starts with a J. My middle name is actually Jabbar. I was named after Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. So it's Rodney JW. And then I have a Facebook, facebook.com/rwalkerx. And then I also have a website. My website is called anewday1.org. It's named after my book.
Rodney, thank you so much again for joining us, man. This was a real pleasure and a real treat.
Oh, no, I appreciate it, man. Thanks a lot.
You've been listening to the I'm Possible Project Show with Josh Rivedal and guest Rodney Walker. I love sharing stories and how to turn impossible into I'm possible. If you want more inspirational stories, our second and third books are in pre-order right now. Changing Minds, Breaking Stigma, Achieving the Impossible, as well as Lemonade Stand. Both contain powerful stories of overcoming tremendous odds. When life gives you lemons, squeeze, add sugar, and pick up a copy of The I'm Possible Project. www.IamPossibleProject.com/pre-order. Thank you so much for tuning in. You're more than a community. You're part of the I'm Possible family. Until next time, sending you lots of love.